Okay, hello friends. Here are some website basics. And I want to talk about website domains and website hosting because a lot of people don't know how it works. Here's your lonely little website floating out in la la land, okay? So every single website has a domain. And what is a domain? A domain is a global name that exists out there in the World Wide Web. Okay, it's a .com, a .org, a .net, etc. There's so many whatevers. Whatever your business is, whatever. And there are several domain providers. GoDaddy, Network Solutions is a domain provider, domains.com, etc. There's hundreds of domain providers. And what does a domain cost? Roughly, a domain cost is going to cost you anywhere from, let's say, $10 a year to about $20 per year. Okay. So if you're paying more than that, there's usually a problem. Okay. There are some really custom domains, like, for example, if you want to have, like, I don't know, Amazon.store, it's obviously going to be taken, but it's going to be valuable too. So sometimes you can pay more for a domain, but generally speaking, they're $10 to $20 a year for a domain name. Okay. And that's strictly the name. Everybody who has a website has got to have a domain name, and it has to reside somewhere. There has to be a domain provider. And most people use register.com or Network Solutions where that name exists. You have to have that .com name. The next part of a website is the hosting account, and that's different, okay? Totally different. So the domain name, let's go over to the host. And what a host is a hard drive, which is nowadays flash drives and cloud drives, but they exist in a building somewhere, usually a data center somewhere around the country, hopefully in this country, but sometimes overseas. You want to try to get them domestic, but that's another story. Okay, so the host hosts your files on a small little server in a data warehouse or data center somewhere. And a host is a storage place for your site. So think of it like a bucket or a container to hold your stuff. So there are host providers like Squarespace, GoDaddy, Wix, etc. There's hundreds of these too. So now you have the domain name provider like Network Solutions, and then you have the domain host. Okay, and usually you have both. Now, some companies like Network Solutions offer hosting as well as domains, and they'll charge you, different rates. A lot of people are getting ripped off though, because a good web host like Squarespace is what I work with quite a bit. It's where I design websites. I do a lot of web stuff on Squarespace. By the way, I don't like GoDaddy and I don't like Wix, but that's for another story. But what do they charge? So Squarespace for a basic site might be somewhere about $200 a year. Oops, I can't even write today. $200 a year. Okay. A lot of people I know are paying $100 to $200 a month because they're getting ripped off. That's why I want to share this information. Okay. So a host is hosting your website files. Now, what is a website? Okay. A website is composed of your brand. Okay. It's going to have your text. It's going to have pictures. It's going to have videos. It's going to be designed, hopefully, by a professional. This is what I do. And there are many like me, though. So hire a good designer. SEO stands for search engine optimization. There's a lot of stuff you do in the back end to make sure your site works well and is visible to the general public. And then marketing. All of this stuff equal files. And these files are stored where? They're stored here. They're stored on your web host. Okay. Remember, your host company, your hosting provider is going to store your files of your website. So that's the difference. But you can't get there without a name, right? So that's why it's important to understand that a website really is composed of these two things. Okay, you have the host, right? And you have the domain. You need both of these things to effectively have your cute little website out there in La La Land. Okay. Now I will say this: beware. This is a huge factor nowadays. Beware cheap solutions. And what I mean by that is that all of these companies, domain providers, hosting providers, especially GoDaddy, they do this a lot, is they'll offer you an easy to use or sometimes free website plan where you can create the whole website. And if you don't know what you're doing, if you're sitting there in space and you're like, I have no idea what the heck any of this means, you're going to easily say, yeah, let's do it. And you end up getting sunk into $200 a month, forget $200 a year to host a site. So you have to beware cheap solutions. Just because they're out there doesn't mean you want them. So always talk to a qualified creative professional that really cares about you and your websites, because you can get ripped off. But those are the basics. You design your website, hopefully with a designer that knows what they're doing. You have all of these files. They have to be hosted at a hosting provider, and you have to have a domain name that people can go to. So that's how they get to your website. That's where they're stored. And that is the basic overview of websites and website domains and website hosting.